Alright, how's it going, everyone? This is Colin Cormier here with our second installation of this box video. So the last video and the demos that we've been doing in class, we left off with this six-sided box right here. You should have six separate bodies, all from a single extrusion, a shell, and then splitting those bodies and then mirroring them across the box. So what we're going to do in this video is essentially blow through the rest of this box. The idea is that we're going to add some knobs, we're going to add a little finger catch on the front, and then some dummy screws on the side, as well as this hinge to get the box lid to theoretically flip. So hopefully this video is helpful in like gaining those steps so that you can get through this project. Whoa. Alright, go back to this. So first thing, there's a couple things that we want to start off with. I'm actually going to make a quick section analysis in the other direction. Ooh, okay. There we go. Don't know what's going on there, but so I want to make this a little bit thinner. So the project requirement for this box, we're going to say that all the sides are going to be 3/4 of an inch, but this bottom, let's say, is going to be 1/2 inch. So the tool that we're going to use is this press pull tool up here, or under modify press pull. Shortcut is also Q, but I don't use this tool often enough to be able to use that shortcut. So I'm going to select this bottom face, press pull, and then move it up slightly. So I'm going to go ahead and just type in -0.25. And that's taking away that 1/4 of an inch so that this now measures at 1/2 inch. So now that we have that in place, I can get rid of this section analysis, kind of bring my box back. And let's start on this hinge first. So I want to move this top face back, but I have no good way of selecting this. I know that I talked about it in class today, but I often use the shortcut V to hide bodies that are visible within the sphere here, right here. You can also do it with the light bulbs over here, but typically the way that I work is that I'm like hyper focused on an area, and right now I need to get rid of this top. So I'll select this, hit V, and then it'll get out of the way. I can always bring it back over here, but for the most part I tend to hide all my bodies with the shortcut. And then bring them back from the tree over here. It's just a little bit easier to manage. So yeah, that's a little useful, handy tool that I hope helps you. The hiding and showing bodies is really useful when we start working with more complex assemblies with lots of parts. It starts to get a little bit weird when we have stuff obstructing our view that we just need to get rid of it. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the press pull tool. I'm going to select this face back here, and we're going to drop it down our material thickness. So I'm going to do -0.75. I'm going to hit OK. So that brings that back. If you look at our box here, there's a body here that represents the hinge. I'm going to go ahead and hide these. Another reason this shortcut is so useful is that I can quickly because these don't have names yet, I can quickly hide the things that I don't want to see. So what we want is, we want to add something to our top of this box so that we can create a hinge from it. I guess really quick, we can also name bodies. If you triple click, it gives you the option to create a name for them. So another handy thing that I'm just going to throw in this video. So the way we're going to do this is that I'm going to hit E for extrude under create extrude over here, and then I'm going to go ahead and select this face. And the reason I'm not using the push pull tool is that if let me start with the press pull tool. If I select this and I try and pull this face, it's going to just not give me any options to like create an additional body. It's going to automatically join that back in. So I want to do extrude. I'm going to select this face and we'll just drag it up for now. And right now that's doing the same thing as the press pull tool where the operation is joining back in. What I want is new body. So what that's going to do is it's going to create a brand new body in my tree over here that I can create, that I can do different operations to, and it's going to be separate from this back panel. I also want this top to be flush with this face up here. So I could easily type in 0.75 because I know I just pulled that. But for good practice, we have this extent over here that what we want to use is toObject, and what that allows us to do is that rather than type in a distance field over here, I'm gonna hit toObject and then select an object, let's say this point or this face, where it's going to just extrude up to that. And then not give me any other options. I can offset it, but for the most part, because I want that to be completely flush to itself, I'm good to go with that. So I'm going to hit OK. My computer's going to take a second. But we now have this new body in this tree that if I select it, nice and fancy. So, whoa. This mouse is not good for Fusion for whatever reason. It does not like the middle mouse click. So now that we have that in place, let's go ahead and start with our screws. So if we look at our file over here, this is where naming stuff comes in handy. They should be over here. We're going to go ahead and model in our screws right now. So we're going to do, I think in this file it's set up a little bit differently. I showed in class today how to do both a cut revolve and an extruded revolve. So we're going to demo that even though it's not in this file, because I think it's super helpful to be able to see that you can reuse sketches for multiple operations, and that you can overlap multiple operations in order to get the results that you really want. So let's see. We're going to go ahead and, oh my god, this is seriously annoying me. Okay. So if we take a look at our box right here, our screw is perfectly in the middle of this face and this face right here. I saw a lot of students with the problem of, let's see if I can find it. I saw a lot of students with the problem that their screw head overlaps this edge out here. And what's happening is that people are selecting these outside faces right here and then sketching on those. And because of the lack of references, the sketch ends up not in position, and we go to revolve it. It's not like completely encased in that body. So what we're going to do is we're going to go under construct and then construct midplane. What that does is it allows us to create a plane in between two faces that is like perfectly split. So I'm actually going to cancel out of that really quick. I'm going to hide these. I'm going to do construct midplane. I'm going to select this top face. And I want to select this bottom face right here. Now we have this nice orange construction plane right here. Super helpful is that you can select this edge. This plane theoretically extends out an infinite amount. So yeah, good to know. It can be a little bit hard to select by the default size, so I always stretch it out a little bit. You can also hide it in the construction folder over here. But again, going back to selection, I saw a lot of students with the problem that their sketch was not on the right plane. I went over this and put a lot of emphasis that I will select some of these tricky areas to some of these tricky planes beforehand and then create a sketch to know that I'm on the right one. Otherwise, what I risk doing is, let's see if I can rewind to the point where my plane is small, is that what I'm imagining is happening is people are going to create a sketch hovering over this plane and then accidentally selecting like this one, and then they're not sketching on the right plane, and then they have to go back and redo that whole operation because it's kind of a pain in the ass moving sketches from different planes. So I'm going to make sure I have this one selected. I'm going to go ahead and create sketch. And then I'm going to bring back the sides of my box because I know I want to use that. I'm going to need to use that as a reference. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the line tool. And I know because I messed this up in class today demoing this, is that we're going to need a mirror line to mirror our screw over to the other side over here. So what I'm going to do is instead of drawing off of this origin point right here, which should technically be parametric no matter what as we update our box, I'm going to set it up so that I'm going to hover over the midpoint, our little triangle right here, and then bring it down and then do the same thing so it's a straight line from midpoint to midpoint. And it's now added these purple reference lines right here. So I don't want that to be, I'm going to go ahead and hide this for now. I don't really want that to like interfere with any of my geometry, so I'm going to select this and then create construction lines. And we went over this in class. I'm not going to go into too much detail about it over here, but essentially what this construction thing does is that allows you to take sketch geometry. So let's say like a square. I'm going to draw two squares. And indicate that the sketch geometry is just for reference. So now that I've turned this into construction lines, it's no longer an open profile. I can't extrude it. I can't really do much about it. I can use it as a reference. So if I want to draw a line that's say like at the midpoint of this and like sketch it out, it's super useful for stuff like that. If I want to, let's say like bring it back, I can select it, unconstruct, and I now have regular lines again. So it's not permanent. You can toggle between back and forth. But I tend to have pretty much anything I'm not directly using in a sketch to create geometry as a construction line. So, all right, I'm gonna show my bodies again and finish setting up this sketch. So I want my screw to be centered between essentially this face and this face right here. So the way that we're gonna do that is we're gonna set up an axis. I'm going to sketch slightly outside of here for demonstration purposes, and then I'm going to hover over this point right here to make sure that I'm snapping to the midpoint of this line segment right here. So I want that to be a midpoint. And I'm going to go ahead and select this. I'm going to go ahead and select this line right here with Control or Shift. And then I'm going to go ahead to my sketch palette over here and then hit midpoint. So regardless of this, like, I'm trying to work around this origin point. I don't really want anything to snap to it, just as like a thing of good practice in case like anything really changes. I don't want Fusion messing me up downstream, so I'm going to set up my sketch so that it's a little bit smarter, even if it is a little bit more work. So at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select these two, turn this into construction geometry, so that I can use those as a reference as well without interfering with my sketch profile. So if I hide my bodies, this is all I've done so far, is that I've created essentially 3 lines, 1, 2, 3. Actually, I don't think I created this one. I think I just created this one and this one. And Fusion has created these other 3 lines for me based on the reference, based on the geometry, referencing the geometry that is already existing. So when I go back and update my box, Fusion is going to update this with me, and my sketch in this circumstance will update according to this geometry, which is great. We can do a lot of like adaptive changes on the fly, just like being smart about the way that we set up our sketches. So I'm going to go ahead, hit L for the line tool. I'm going to hover for this coincident point right here, and then click, and then, okay, there we go. I want to make sure that I have the blue X over this line, and it's going to create another reference line. If I hide my bodies, there's going to be a big purple line here. So we need this point right here in order to determine the outside face of our screw. And then I'm going to go ahead and then, you know what? Create construction geometry. So all this work so far has just been to set up our sketch and make our lives easier as we set up the rest of our profile for our screw. So I'm going to do that really quick, which is pretty straightforward. I'm going to start off by sketching half of my screw. I'm going to select this point because that's going to be my mirror line. I'm going to click drag out and make a little bit of angle. I know it's going to come back out, and then I want to make sure that I have this blue X on this long axis right here. So so when I go to mirror it, that this point will be coincident with itself, and I won't have any problems with dimensioning it. So I'll have blue lines at this point. I can click and drag out. I'm not looking to sketch anything super precise. We're going to add in some dimensions and do that manually. So we're going to, let's see. So with hardware, we're never really working with half of the dimension of hardware. It's always whole dimensions. So the way that I want to set this up is that I don't want to dimension the diameter, I guess the radius of this screw right now. I want to mirror it across this line and then dimension it from there in order to create make like smart dimensions. So I'm going to go under Sketch, Mirror, and what you can do now is click on these lines right here to select them. Or I'm going to deselect everything. If you double click on like linked, kind of like, it doesn't necessarily need to be a closed profile. It just needs to be like continuous. If I double click on this line, it'll select all of my geometry in that like continuous line. And then I'm going to select my mirror line, and I'm going to use this line right here. So if I hit OK, I now have this like completely mirrored screw that I can adapt and change to my heart's content. So now it's going to be a lot easier to dimension our screw. I'm going to go into an orthographic view. Oh my god. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to add in a diameter. Say 3/16. Not looking for really anything specific. I know that the dimension of my countersink... Actually, let me start that over. The dimension for my countersink is pretty standard. So I want to add a degree between these two faces. So to add an angle dimension, all you need to do is select two lines that are non-parallel, and Fusion will kind of figure out from there that you're trying to specify an angle. So I'm going to select these two and then drag this out and then click to make it real. And then I'm going to type in 82. That's where things start getting a little bit weird. Is that this is going to be a standard angle, but I need to add a dimension. Let's do this top one right here in order to keep the head of my screw somewhat normal. So I'm going to go ahead. Let's make it 1/8 of an inch. I don't know if that's even a real screw size, but it doesn't really matter. I'm going to follow this same degree process right here. I'm going to go ahead and make this 135, and then the total length of our screw, let's say, is going to be 2 inches. Cool. So now if you look at our sketch, we have a completely closed profile. It's orange versus the white out here. I can kind of select this and I can extrude it, or I can revolve it. For our revolve, I want to use half of a profile rather than the whole thing. And that just comes with like good practice. Is like things start to get wonkier, Fusion starts to get a little bit weird. So it's good practice to do revolve half of a profile rather than the full thing. I'm going to go ahead and make this a construction line. And then in order to get my open profile again, I'm going to hit L for the line tool. I'm going to select the tip right here, drag it over here, and I now have my closed profile again. And I don't have any blue lines. I can't click or drag any of this around because it's fully constrained and dimensioned along my reference geometry so that it's just never going to move. So if you have any geometry that has like blue or white points, then you're missing something. It's either a piece of reference geometry, or it's a dimension, or it's a constraint somewhere in here that you'll have to figure out what that is. So now that I have that in there, all I need to do is mirror this across this profile so that I can create them on both sides. So I'm going to go under Sketch and go under Mirror. I'm going to double click on this to get my whole profile. It's a lot easier than selecting every single line. I'm going to hit OK. And I can show my bodies again if I really want to. But our sketch is pretty much done. Like, we can create some cool stuff. So I'm going to hit Stop Sketch. What I'm going to do is, because I'm going to have a hard time selecting this right here, so I'm going to hide the bodies folder right now, and then I'm going to go under Create and Revolve. So I'm going to go ahead and select this. I'm going to go ahead and select this. And we want a hole for our screw right now. So I'm going to select these two profiles. I need an axis to revolve around. So I'm going to go ahead and, because we reference this line right here, this is going to act as my axis. I'm going to get an error because I don't have any bodies visible, but as soon as I toggle this on, it's going to default to cut, which is fine. We're actually going to do that. We want to cut out this pocket for our screw. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. Nice. We got some holes with some countersinks. Awesome. Alright, so now we actually want like an actual screw in there. So the way that we're going to do that is we're going to expand our sketch tree over here. Make sure I have the right one, and I'm going to show this again. And we're going to do the same exact thing, because we can recycle sketches within Fusion. It's great. So I can go ahead, I'm going to go ahead and hit the Revolve tool, select this profile. With that pocket, like it kind of revolved out, it becomes a lot easier to select. So I'm not going to worry about hiding my bodies. But this time I'm going to, instead of hit join or cut, I'm going to create new body. I'm going to hit OK. So I'm going to go ahead and hide this sketch now. So in my tree, I should have this top, which for now is going to be invisible. I should have some sides, these sides, okay. So I have my bottom, and then I have this kind of hinge, and then I have 2 screws. That's where we should more or less be at right now. So yeah, from there, like if we take a look at our example file over here, we're like pretty close to getting there. If we like drag our timeline back, I think we're like about right here. Well, we actually, the revolve cut isn't in this one. So next step, we're going to do this little lip, and it's the same exact process. I'm going to go ahead. This is our back right now, so I'm going to go ahead and assume that this is going to be our front. I'm going to go ahead and select this face, and then create sketch. So this is a little bit more freeform. I'm going to kind of set up the same exact thing where I'm going to midpoint to midpoint. I'm going to create a construction line, and then I'm going to hit L for line. I'm going to drag this out as long as it's relatively straight. And then I'm going to go under arc. So I want like a little round in this corner. The way that I'm going to get that is with this 3-point arc. I'm going to go ahead and make sure that my point is coincident here. And then I'm going to select on this line right here and then drag out. So if you can see it here, there's a little circle with a blue line underneath it, and that means tangent. That means that this arc like has continuity with this curve right here, and we want that. But in order to show you, so let's say I accidentally click out here, I can select both of these and then go into my sketch palette over here and then hit tangent, and it'll make those tangent. And then I can kind of start manipulating stuff from there. So I'm going to go ahead at this point and mirror this across. So I'm going to double click, mirror it across this line to get my full profile. I'm not 100% sure. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and also close this off. And all we really need is some dimensions at this point. So I'm going to go ahead, select these. I'm going to make it, let's say, 1/4 of an inch. And then, let's see, we want this to, let's say, like 12 inches. Again, nothing really specific. And then I need some sort of dimension right here. So right now, that basically, like, if I tried hard on it, yeah, there we go. The radius of this arc is going to change. So I can either click on the arc to determine its radius, or I can say, like, let's select this point, and then create a length dimension right there. So there's a couple of options. I'm going to go ahead and get creative with it. I'm going to say this is going to be a radius of 1 inch. So all black lines, our sketch is fully constrained. Let's go ahead and revolve it. So I'm going to hit stop sketch, create, revolve, select my profile, select my axis. I can select this line right here. It's going to default to cut, hit OK. And then I have my little finger trap. So pretty straightforward. Once you have the screw figured out, it's pretty much the same exact process, and this becomes a lot easier. A lot easier to handle. So once that's done, show our lid. If we go to our demo file right here, I think this shows, okay, this shows the separate bodies. We're not going to worry too much about it then. So let's see. Okay, looks like knobs and then fillets. So I'm going to change the order a little bit. Show our box. I'm going to take a look at the, so like we have these like we have these rounds in here which are called fillets. There's a tool for that within Fusion, and it's pretty straightforward, and that's why I want to show it first. So if I go over to my demo file over here, I'm going to go ahead and hide this. Hide this. This is a pretty useful tool. Under modify, there's second one down is fillet. The shortcut for that is F, and all I need to do is select an edge in this circumstance. If I click and drag that, it just creates like a continuous curve like feature on that edge. So you can go ahead and type in a dimension. I'm going to go ahead and do half of that, And then I'm going to hold down Control and select this top edge. No. Then this top edge over here. So that should give my lid clearance to revolve around that point if it's theoretically made correctly. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. And then we have the fillets out of the way. I think in the demo file it has it separated out as separate features, but I tend to, if it's the same dimension or like roughly the same body, try and pack in as many as I can into the same feature just to avoid cluttering up my timeline. But yeah, that's how that tool works. Super useful for getting those blended corners. All right, so all that we have left now, if we go to our demo file, is these knobs. So the way that we're going to do that, same exact or at least similar process as the screws, but I'll blow through it really quick. So rather than create a midplane, like if we take a look at where our knobs are, is that the way that we want to revolve this is that we don't really have a good way of like creating that revolve profile in any good place. So what we're going to do is I'm going to hide this lid. We're going to go under construct and offset plane. So rather than a midplane, what this does is it takes an existing plane. So let's say like this top face right here. It allows you to like just create an offset plane in like whatever scenario you need to. So I'm going to go ahead and drop this down an inch. And I can now like make sure I have this selected. If I create sketch, it's going to snap me to the top of my box. And then I'm going to quickly just draw sketch so that we can see offset plane. Super useful for like, otherwise like my sketch would be up here, my knob would be at the top edge of my box. It just generally doesn't make any sense. So the offset plane tool is pretty useful for like getting that geometry in the place that you need it. You can see I have this purple line here again because it's referencing this top edge of my box. And all I'm going to really do is, if I zoom back in on here, I have my midpoint already set up. So basically this is going to be the axis for my knob. I'm going to go ahead, hide my bodies at this point. I'm going to go ahead and make this construction geometry. Let's say we want I'm going to go ahead and start off by adding a dimension. We want our knobs to say, let's be like 2.5 inches long. And then I'm going to sketch in that profile. And it's the same process. So I'm going to go ahead and mirror this across, double click. And say, let's see, this will be 1 inch. Why not? This will be 0.75. This is going to be a pretty ugly knob, but let's make this 1 inch. Actually, let's do this as... Yeah, I actually kind of like that. Sure, doesn't matter. Alright. So if I show my bodies again... Ooh, yeah, that's actually huge. Let's make this 2. Let's make this 0.75. Let's make this 0.25. None of this makes any sense. Okay, that's good enough. Okay, so I want to make sure that this is a closed profile. If I go back into my top plane, clearly missing something. I know that it's right here because I made that mistake before. So I'm gonna go ahead and sketch that in. Sketch this across. I'm gonna double click this in order to make it construction, so that I can revolve it. And then I need to set up a sketched line so that I can mirror this across. I'm going to go ahead and hit this midpoint to this midpoint. Go ahead and make this construction geometry. And then if I hit sketch, mirror, object, mirror about, over here, hit stop sketch. We're going to go under create, revolve, select this profile, select this profile, select an axis, instead of join, new body, and then our box now has knobs. So at this point, this is all you really need for Monday. it's once you figure out those, like, how to set up a sketch so that it's referenced, being able to dimension it, and then using the revolve tool in order to like create geometry. It's all pretty straightforward. It's all the same application in just like 3 kind of different scenarios, so it's not really anything crazy. But those are the steps that I took. Go ahead, and I've added this folder to our shared Fusion folder, so go ahead and reference that for the steps, and if you're super OCD about it, the dimensions as well. But other than that, this is all I'm really looking for to have done on Monday. So if you have any questions in the meantime, please feel free to email me, and hopefully I can help you out. But in the meantime, thanks for watching, and I hope this helps. Cool. Thanks.